Hello everyone. With the Destiny 2 announcement, there has been a lot of people moving from the console to the PC in preparation for its release. I have been doing my best to help people with that move. So in this recording, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Then I'm going to move into the AMD Threadripper discussion, and finally the X299. Let's get started with Destiny 2. As far as Destiny 2 is concerned, there isn't a lot of information about it. The only known factor is the PC specs to the demo computer. That's what I have pulled up here on the screen. So this 4K resolution support is actually off. We'll get into that in a second. The more important information is that it was using a GTX 1080 Ti with an i7-7700K. So, goes to show that the 7700K is still doing really well. Now, let's talk about that resolution. So, this is a website that I've been pulling up with most of my PC recordings. It's a great resource. 4K resolution is actually 3840 by 2160, not 3820 by 2160. I'm not sure if this is a misprint or on purpose. Who knows? Moving into the AMD Threadripper discussion now. So the most that we know is that it's a 16 core processor with 32 threads at the highest end. It's supposedly going to be released later this year. The rumored cost of the 16 core processor is $850. It's unclear as to whether AMD will stick with that number or have a number around that. Let's just assume for a moment that it was 850. If it was, it would be competition to the i9, which is the X299 platform. The i9 16-core processor is $1,700. So if they can make a 16-core for $850, that would be well near half the price. So that's interesting. In addition to the Threadripper announcement, AMD has also announced that they will be reducing the prices on their Ryzen 7 chipsets. I don't know if this will be a permanent price reduction or temporary. If it does stay with the price reduction, then this would make the Ryzen 7 chipsets more competitive with Intel. The i7-7700K can be found for as low as $330. So it's a lot cheaper than a 1700X. That makes it good for economy as well as gaming. The i7-7700K is really hard to beat in benchmarks. So if the 1700X does drop in price down to what an i7-7700K was at the very start, I can see it as a possible option if people really want to use a Ryzen chipset. I'll be sure to link all these articles to you. Let's go ahead and discuss the X299 platform, which is Skylake X and Skylake X. I have been watching a lot of YouTube videos on it and reading as many articles as I can find. As far as I know, the X299 platform has people in a bit of confusion. This is because of the way the platform is and that there is not really much of a difference with the 7740X in comparison to the 7700K. The 7740X was supposed to be a replacement to the 7700K is my understanding. The problem is that the 7740X is only 100 megahertz faster than the 7700K. So it doesn't make sense to get the X299 platform if you are going to be using the 7740X. If you're going to be using um, the Skylake X, Skylake X platform, then you should be using a 7800X. This is the 6-core model. It's priced at $389. We have to wait for benchmarks, but I would imagine that a 6-core processor for $389 is going to be good competition um, for going against the Ryzen series. Now, the other thing too we have to keep an eye on is the prices. When I think it was the X99 or Broadwell, if I remember right, when those were first released, the motherboards were $200. I never saw a motherboard for under $200 for a very long time. So the overall cost is going to be high because of the motherboard. However, Intel is good at cooling, so you can work with a 70 CFM CPU fan and be fine. I'd have to look for the combined total cost of a $30 CPU fan plus a $200 motherboard if that's what happens, and a $389 processor. The reason I'm looking at all that is because Ryzen is really hard to cool. I think you can get away with a 70 plus CFM CPU fan, but it will more than likely be safer to use liquid cooling. Assuming you're using liquid cooling on a Ryzen 7 chipset, I would imagine that the cost of that would equal what it would take for an X299 with a 70 CFM CPU fan. Again, we will see. Um, as far as the non-CPU stuff, the X299 platform does feature a lot of things that weren't present on prior motherboards. I think one of the features that has my attention is Direct NVMe, I think is what it's called. Apparently, there's some sort of way for the motherboard to run NVMe directly to the CPU. If I'm understanding this all correctly, it means that you can boot off Intel Optane or an NVMe drive. If that's the case, then that's really interesting. That means now Intel Optane has even more value to it. Intel Optane prior to most of this was only used as a stick of cache to support a hard drive. So if it can have a dual function built into it, then that means you won't really need a solid state drive. If it can boot your operating system, it would be basically the same effect as a solid state drive, I would imagine. So yeah, there's a lot to see, and I hope that Intel does a really good job with this. So far, it's looking pretty bad with some of the things they've done, um, but maybe they'll recover. This is the most I have. Thanks for listening.